Let me tell you how the world of Fanny works. So this is a very strange world. It's a very interesting world. I get up every day, get the kids ready for school, do all that jazz, and then kind of get to work, start packing up orders a lot. But one of the things that I do throughout the day is I really like to kind of look at the trading card market. Obviously, I mean, that is a no-brainer because we talk about it on this channel all the time. We're always talking about the Pokemon card market. We're talking about the ebbs and flows of Pokemon cards, what happened, when to buy. It's a very, very interesting thing to kind of look at. And Pokemon cards are extremely cyclical, right? They move up and down. They go all over the place. But there is one thing that I have explained in the past that I think is very important. I do believe that single Pokemon cards, and sealed Pokemon cards for that matter, do have a basement. They have a floor level, a level that they will hit, that they will never hit again. However, they do not necessarily have a ceiling. And we've seen this before. Base set booster boxes, for example, at one point in time were significantly cheaper. During the pandemic, they jumped all the way up to $28,000 for a sealed booster box. Now, you can find them if you look extremely hard. You can probably find them for about half that price, about $14,000, $15,000 right now. But they will never go back again to $80, $70 like they were in the early 2000s. Now, will they get back to $28,000? I don't know. That's going to be very, very difficult. But it is possible as more and more supply gets opened. If demand remains consistent for Pokemon, it is very possible that they will get back to that $28,000 price point. Now, if you look at single prices, kind of the same thing. In the world of Fanny, the way that I was kind of trying to figure this out, I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could figure out a video together? This is me and the Fan Clan community. We're talking together. This is really just me talking and you guys hopefully commenting down. Leave a comment. Make sure you comment. Let me know what you think. Going back and forth, trying to figure out when is the best time to buy Pokemon cards. When do you want to kind of pull the trigger to add a piece to your collection? Because let's face it, this is an expensive hobby. A lot of cards out there, and all those prices, all those spends on Pokemon cards can add up, and it can be very, very expensive. And the last thing that you want to do is burn yourself out, overspend, because then the hobby is not going to be as enjoyable for you. So it's really important to try and pinpoint when the best time is to buy cards, to buy Pokemon cards, but it's not easy. And the world of Fanny is constantly trying to figure out, okay, well, what can we do if I pull data here, if I pull data here, because there's data all over the place, and TCG Player does a really good job of listing what I think is a lot of important data that we can kind of look at, and that's what we're going to do in today's video here. I've got a bunch of data, and this video could be terrible. I'm just going to give you a warning right now. This video could be terrible, but it took me a long time to put all this data together, and I think between my small brain and your big brains that we can kind of come together and figure out, okay, what correlation is happening? So I'm asking basically your help. What can we figure out from this data that will help us determine the exact right time in order to buy Pokemon cards to add to our collection, to make sure that we're not overspending? So I'm going to flip you guys around so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Sellout mode. Have you gone to fanmerch.com? Look, we got a new Supreme style Fan Clan tee. This is a terrible I'm just so bad at this. I'm just going to go to fanmerch.com if you want to support the channel. You can get one of these cool watermelon Fanny sweatshirts right here. Really cool. 2 Chug Again if you want to. Like I said, the new Fan Clan Supreme style shirt. I'm going to get rid of this because I have no idea what I'm just selling out like terrible. This is a Rayquaza GX. This is from Celestial Storm. So I don't know if you were in the hobby when Celestial Storm came out, but it was a big deal. I remember vending, having a booth at the Memphis Regional Championships. Now there's no regional championships in Memphis anymore. It moved over to Knoxville. So the last couple of seasons it's been in Knoxville, Tennessee. But at one point in time it was in Memphis, and this card, Rayquaza GX, came out, Celestial Storm came out right after the release of Celestial Storm. And it was a very important card in the meta because Rayquaza GX was expected to be very dominant. It was a strong deck that weekend. I think it ended up winning the regional tournament that weekend. But at the time, this Rayquaza GX specifically, this Rainbow Rare Rayquaza GX, was not anywhere near the price point it is now. Nowhere near. Right now it's selling for $102.52. That is a 1-year low. As you can see on the graph right here, it is lower than it has been all year. At one point in time, it had creeped all the way up right here to $127.38. This is TCGplayer.com. We use this a lot, so you can use TCGplayer.com. A lot of really good data on this website outside of just buying and selling cards. But you can see at one point in time, it hit $127.38 and then started a tailspin. So it's going down. It is at a 1-year low right now, $102.52. The reason I'm pinpointing this card is because I have owned a business, a Pokemon card trading store online for several years. And I have not had a Rainbow Rare Rayquaza GX in stock for a very long time. They just don't come up very often. I think we bought one at a recent regional event, and then we priced it and put it in the booth, and it ended up selling that same weekend. So it never made its way to our online website. So I went into my back office to see pricing history, to see what it looks like on Rayquaza GX. And I saw a few months after the release of Celestial Storm, we listed this card for $36.99. $36.99. So that means that at that time, the market pricing was right around $37. Now, this was, 5 years ago, so this was a long time ago, but we are nowhere near that. And I am confident saying that I don't think we will ever get to that point again for the Rayquaza GX Rainbow Rare. Now, this happens with every single out there, every card out there, every Pokemon card in existence. It's going to hit a level that it will most likely never get to again. Now, are we going to see massive gains like this where a pandemic? I don't know. I don't know if we're ever going to see gains like this ever again, but I am confident saying that, okay, well, at one point in time, this hit $127.38. Is it possible that it goes above $127.38? Yeah, absolutely. But do you think it's possible that it's going to go below $36.99, which is the basement pricing that we had it listed at 5 years ago? I don't think so. Like that is my interpretation of it. So what I decided to do, and this is the rabbit hole that I went down, and this is the data that I am providing that hopefully we can figure out the best time in order to buy cards. So I think that there's a lot of different factors that go into decision making when you are trying to pull the trigger on a Pokemon card, when you're deciding to buy a Pokemon card. So release date, so age of set is extremely important. What I did is I took the pricing, I took the quantity sold, I took the available listings, I took the release date for every single special illustration rare on page 1 of TCG Player. So it ended up being like 24 cards, and then I added one additional one, which I'll explain when we get to it. So there's like 3 pages of special illustration rares. Obviously, we're only in the 6th set that has been released during the Scarlet and Violet block, because we've had 2 specialty sets, and then we've had 4 main series sets, Temporal Forces, knocking on the proverbial door with pre-releases starting tomorrow already. So release date does play an impact, because supply and demand is going to play an impact, right? Right now, Paldean Fates, for example, is a set that came out in January of 2024, so it's only a little over a month old. There are a lot of people ripping through Paldean Fates still. A lot of people buying Paldean Fates products, a lot of people experiencing the chase and trying to find, duplicates or triplicates or fill out their master set or whatever the case may be. Maybe somebody pulls multiple copies of this Charizard EX, so they sell off their duplicates so that way they can buy maybe the Gardevoir that they're missing, or the Iono or the Clive, or whatever the case may be. So release date does play a factor, because that's going to influence how many packs are being opened, whereas a set like Paldea Evolved, for example, has been out now for almost a year. We are on the year anniversary month of Scarlet and Violet base, so the Scarlet and Violet generation has already started and been out for a year now. So looking at the release date does play a factor. Also, the available listing. So how many of these products are currently in stock right now? So if you look at Rayquaza GX, so when I just search Rayquaza GX, it'll tell you right here, okay, there's 78 listings. There's only 29 listings available for the Rainbow Rare. There's only 26 available listings for the full art. That plays a factor, because that is the supply that is available to the market. And then we've got the amount that have sold. So the amount sold over the past 7 days. So what I did is I added up the amount that have sold over the past 7 days, because that gives us an indicator of demand. And then I calculated the difference. So if I said, okay, there is 114 available listings of the special illustration rare Charizard EX from Scarlet and Violet 151. Over the past 7 days, 91 of them have sold. So 91 have sold. That means if we follow that trend, and if an additional 91 get sold over the next 7 days, out of 114 available listings, that would bring down the available quantity, the supply that is available, down to 23. Now, that doesn't factor in the amount of people who are continuing to update TCG Player and continuing to list their cards and continuing to add to supply. But I think this is a good start as far as giving us the information, because if 91 sold over the last 7 days, so if more than 91 get listed, then we know the price is going to continue to trend downward, because there's more supply available. However, if less than 91 get listed, then the available listings continues to dwindle and dwindle and dwindle, and then you're in a place like this Rayquaza GX from Celestial Storm, where there's only 29 available, which is obviously going to impact the price, because less availability means mean, if interest level is still there, the price points are going to be higher. That's obviously a collectible strategy. Then we want to look at the price trend over the past month. So with this Charizard EX, for example, right now you can see relatively flat over the past month. It has gone down a little bit. It was right around $118, $119. Now it's sitting at $113. At one point in time, it had dropped down to $110, but it's pretty much right in the middle. It's very, very flat over the past month. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at comparisons in this set. So we'll have other special illustration rares. And again, this is just data being dumped all over the place in a conversation that we're basically looking to have. A lot of Charizard EXs that have been sold over the last 7 days. You got 91 of them. The difference is 23. That means if another 91 sold, there would be 23 available. Now, Scarlet and Violet 151, not that old, right? It came out in September of 2023. There's still products that are popping up. There's still products that you can find at the store at MSRP. We're expecting, still in the reprint window, definitely. So we're expecting a reprint probably at some point this year, I would assume. Now don't quote me on that. That could change. But what does that look like then in the future? Well, if there is still positive supply out there, in my opinion, right now, I would believe that this card is going to continue to trend in the downward direction. I do believe that we will see this card go down to sub $100 prices. I don't think it'll be way below $100, but I do think that as long as it's continuing to trend in the downward direction and supply is still available, it will continue to go down a little bit more. And I could be wrong. We'll see what happens. Next up, we've got Paldean Fates Charizard. So this one is a little bit different. However, this set is extremely new. So there's 100 available copies, 100 available listings on TCG Player, with the market price being $113.33. You can see the trend over the past month going from $190. Now, granted, that was when the set was brand spanking new, all the way down to $113.33. Over the past 7 days, 153 of these have sold on TCG Player. That's a negative 53 supply rate. So we've only got, so if 153 got sold again over the next 7 days, if this didn't get replenished, if this supply didn't get replenished, this would continue, this would probably start trending in the upward direction because we wouldn't have the available supply anymore. However, with Paldean Fates being so new, I believe that this number, unless it's negative 150, negative 200, when a new set comes out like that, the amount of packs that are being cracked and the amount of new singles hitting the secondary market is extremely substantial. So in my prediction, my assumption, this is going to continue to trend in the downward direction as more and more supply gets pulled. And you can let me know if you disagree with me in the comments section down below and why you disagree with me. But I don't think we've seen the bottom of the Paldean Fates Charizard yet. I think a lot of people with booster bundles being readily available at cheap prices and things like that below MSRP, we're going to see this price continue to go down. The Iono is a very interesting one, and there's a lot of different factors that go into this one. So one of the things that we didn't discuss before is competitive playability. I think competitive playability is going to factor into a price trend quite a bit. So Paldea Evolved, obviously almost a year old right now. Not as much Paldea Evolved being opened in the market as what we would see from a set like Scarlet and Violet 151 or Paldean Fates, because they have been released more recently. So 99 that have been listed on TCG Player. So 99 active listings currently on TCG Player with a current market price of $80.45, starting to trend in the upward direction. You can see at one point in time it hit $75. That was after the recent release of Paldean Fates, which added another special illustration rare Iono into the market. Now we do have the knowledge that another release is going to be coming of the Iono Premium Tournament Collection. That should impact the price as well, because there's going to be another full art Iono that hits the market. But if you look, 48 that have been sold over the past week. So that's a lot different than the first two cards that we looked at, the first two Charizards that we looked at, only 48. So if we sold an additional 48 over the next 7 days, if this supply, let's say, gets replenished, you're going to continue to see the available quantities, the available listings go up, and that is going to trend this price downward. So I do believe a card like Iono is going to come down more over the next few months. Now, not necessarily hitting the basement pricing. Obviously, that's very far into the future, and this data is only going to be good. It's something that we're going to need to continue to track over the next several weeks, but it'll be very interesting to kind of look at. Here's the Bubble Mew from Paldean Fates. So we've got this one only obviously a month old. 111 available listings currently on TCG Player at a market price of $79.10. This one continues to trend in the downward direction. And if you look, 147 that have sold over the past 7 days. But what does that tell you? Right now, it's pretty much on par with what we're seeing from the Paldean Fates Charizard EX. And if we assume that this is going to continue to go down, then the assumption would be that this Mew is going to continue to go down as well. And it has continued to go down. Obviously, at one point in time, it was over $100. A week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, it was over $85. Now it continues to trend in the downward direction. So if we stayed on this market, if we stayed on this trend path and sold 147 over the next 7 days, obviously we'd be at negative 36, which is impossible. So we're assuming that the supply level is going to continue to get refilled on TCG Player, which is going to continue to trend this downward. Then we've got Roaring Moon. Roaring Moon is a very interesting one because it does have some competitive playability. You can see over the last couple of weeks starting to trend upwards a little bit. And this is where the data starts getting a little bit more interesting and starts working a little bit better. So Paradox Rift obviously came out in November. It's a set that is probably still getting opened a fair amount, not as much as Scarlet and Violet 151, not as much as Paldean Fates, and not as much as what Temporal Forces will be over the next couple days. So still people opening it, but not as much as probably some of those more popular sets. Plus Roaring Moon, a very competitive card, but if you look at the available listings on TCG Player, only 73. Now, if you remember correctly, this was over $100. This was over $100 in November of 2023 and into the beginning of December, not too long after Paradox Rift release. So 73 listed, 53 that have sold over the past 7 days. That tells me that it's still a fairly popular card and the demand for it is still there. If that continues over the next 7 days, that means there would only be 20 remaining. Now, you know that supply is going to get replenished. There's going to be more that get put up on TCG Player, but is there going to be 53 that get put up over the next 7 days, or is this number right here going to continue to trend in the downward direction? And that's very important. This number right here is probably the most important of everything because available listings is your supply, and that's going to impact the market pricing the most, especially if demand continues to be there. And with Roaring Moon continuing to be extremely competitive, that would tell me that this card is in demand, and we can see already this card starting to trend upward a little bit, and it should continue to trend upward a little bit. Now, I don't think it'll get back up to $100, but we might see it get to $70, $75, somewhere around there. And that's when a lot of people might be like, okay, well, I'm going to move my copy of Roaring Moon because I got into it for, $55. I bought it at $55. It's worth $75. I want to move off of it now and invest that $20 into something else, that $20 profit into something else. So once you hit a point where it gets to a Pokemon card is worth it for a collector or a competitive player to sell, that's when you start hitting more supply on the market and things like that, which is going to impact the market pricing greatly. Then we've got the Gardevoir EX, 93 available. I need to move a lot faster because I'm taking way too long with this video. 93 available listings at a market price of $49.37. There's been 116 that have sold over the past 7 days. That would be negative 23 if the same amount got sold over the next 7 days. That's a better availability than Mew, a better availability than Charizard. This card has trended downward over the past week. So if we said Mew and Charizard are going to continue trending downward, I would assume the Gardevoir EX will do the same thing. Here's the Obsidian Flames Charizard EX. This one came out in August of 2023. So this one's been out for a little while. Not a whole lot of people opening up as much Obsidian Flames. There's still the Charizard chase going on, but it's not as big as what it was, obviously, when Obsidian Flames first came out. I think a lot of people are more focused on the Charizard from Paldean Fates, or maybe more focused on the Charizard from 151. This card has been trending in the downward direction ever since release. It has gone up a little bit over the past week or so, week and a half, so it's sitting at $48.09. But if you look, availability seems to be there. It seems like supply is there and demand is not quite big enough to keep up with it. So 176 that were listed on TCG Player, which is already a pretty high number for special illustration rares when you compare it to the other special illustration rare quantities out there. 92 that have sold over the past week. That shows you an available quantity of 84 if we had the same amount sold over the next 7 days. So trending in the downward direction. I would expect it to continue to trend in the downward direction. I don't think we'll hit, $25, but I think you might see a $40 Charizard EX in the near future. future. We'll see what happens. The Blastoise EX from Scarlet and Violet 151. This one's much more interesting than the Charizard because the availability of it is way, way lower. So 103 available listings on TCG Player with a $46.06 market price, but 100 have sold over the past week. So supply is almost exceeding, or demand is almost exceeding supply, which is really important. So if the same quantity sold over the next 7 days, that would only leave 3 available. So unless we're seeing over 100 of these listed on a weekly basis, it's going to continue trending in the upward direction. You can see right now it's already starting to trend in the upward direction. At the beginning of February, it's sitting right around $42. It's gained about 10% over the past month and continuing to trend in the upward direction, sitting at $46.06 currently. Same thing with the Venusaur right here, just not on as grand of a scale as what we saw from the Blastoise. 123 currently listed. The demand a little bit higher than what we saw from the Blastoise, probably because of the price point being a little bit cheaper, but that would only leave 22 available listings of the same quantity sold over the next 7 days. So unless these get replenished, we're going to see demand continue to stay the same and supply shrink down, and this is going to continue to trend in the upward direction. This went from $38 up to $42.56. Currently, it might continue to grow another 10-15% over the next month. Same thing with the Zapdos EX. You can see 155 that are listed on TCG Player, 96 still a strong demand for the Zapdos EX. That would leave 59 available, continuing to trend in the upward direction. Here's the Iono from Paldean Fates. Same thing as what we discussed with the Charizard, same thing as what we discussed with the Mew, same thing as what we discussed with the Gardevoir. There's just so many packs being opened with 126 available listings, 169 that have sold over the past week, but the idea that more Ionos are coming out soon would make us assume that this is going to continue to trend in the downward direction, somewhere around the high 20s, somewhere in the low 30s, somewhere around there. Might lose another 10-15% over the next month or so. The Golden Go EX from Paradox Rift, we only have 90 available listings. This is much less available than what some of the other ones are. You can see over the last 7 days, only 46 of them have sold. So not the most in-demand card from Paradox Rift. However, Golden Go does have a lot of competitive connotations associated with it, so it could be strong in the upcoming format, which would impact the pricing a little bit. But you can see if we sold 46 again over the next 7 days, that would leave 44 available listings, assuming that this didn't get replenished, but I do believe it would get replenished. We should see this card stay relatively flat over the next several weeks. You can see it dropped down to about $30, but for the most part over the past month it's stayed right around 31, 32 bucks. The Paradox Rift Iron Valiant EX special illustration rare. This one also very interesting because this one is performing extremely well. You can see 84 available listings, so much less listings out there than what we've seen from a lot of these other Pokemon cards. $30.93 is the current market price. It's trending downward a little bit, so it was at about $34.50. Now it's dropped about 10-15% down to $30.99. But if you look at the demand for it, is showing that it's selling the majority of its available listings on a weekly basis. So 82 of them have sold over the past week. If this doesn't get replenished, then the supply is going to continue to come down, and we're going to start seeing this card trend in the upward direction. So it's going to be interesting data to continue to keep our eyes on. The Alakazam EX trending in the downward direction. You can see relatively, well, I guess it's down about $2 over the past month or so. 135 available copies at a market price of $29.52. 83 have sold over the past week, so supply is still there. About 52 available listings would happen if this supply did not get replenished, but with the amount of Scarlet and Violet 151 that continues to be opened, I do believe that it will continue to be replenished. You might see this card go down a few more dollars, down to about 25, somewhere around there. Much different than the Blastoise and the Venusaur, which pretty much had no availability, supply continuing to fall further and further down. If we look at the Miriam from Scarlet and Violet base, 150 currently listed, but demand is just not there. Only 45 that have sold over the past week, which means that supply is still very strong for this card. It's sitting at $28.28. It's been relatively flat over the past month or so, a little bit over the past half month, I should say, but still way down from where it was even a month ago. At the beginning of February, it's sitting at $35. You can see it's lost about 20% over the past month, sitting at $28.28. And with supply still being there and demand not following suit, you'll probably continue to see that trend in the downward direction. The Iron Hands doing extremely well. A lot of Paradox Rift special illustration are doing extremely well. This one trending downward a little bit. You can see it's lost about 20% over the last month, but supply and demand do not add up, do not match up at all. So supply for this one, 92 available listings, but 107 that have sold over the past week. If that continued, that trend continued without being replenished, that would leave us with a negative 15 count as far as supply goes. So I don't know if we're going to continue to see 107 special illustration rare Iron Hands be listed over the next week, which means supply would continue to fall down. You might look at this in a week and see this had, 85 copies or 80 available listings somewhere around there, and then you'll start seeing this price trend in the upward direction. Plus, Iron Hands does have a lot of playability in the competitive format, so we'll see how that does. But right now, my assumption is over the next month or so, you might see this go up to $25, $26, somewhere around there. If we look at the Erica's Invitation right here, 199 available listings with 99 being sold over the last week. That means that's showing me that supply and demand do not line up very well. There's not a whole lot of demand for this card when you compare it to the amount of supply available. Card relatively flat over the past month. You can see it peaked a little bit here at about $25 right around February 23rd or so, but then dropped back down to $21.62, which is very close to where it started February at. So it's been relatively flat, but I would assume as long as supply continues to be there and demand not following suit, we might see this card dip down below $20 in the near future. The Chine Pao is actually doing really well despite the fact that supply really isn't matching up with demand. Again, this is where the age factor plays a big role in a card's market performance. 94 available listings on TCG Player, currently at a market price of $20.71. Trending in the upward direction. It was about $18 at the beginning of February. It's about 10% higher than that right now. 40 of them have sold over the past week. If that continued suit, that would only leave about 54 available listings. Will there be over 40 that get listed over the next week? I mean, we'll have to look at the data and find out, but this might be something that we can continue to come back to and see if there's any correlation between the price trends or not. Then we've got the Altaria EX from Paradox Rift, much different than what we looked at from these other cards from Paradox Rift. Same thing with the Parasol Lady. I'm going to try and get both of these on the screen at the same time. You can see both of them trending down, but the available quantity is much higher than what we saw from Iron Hands, from Roaring Moon, and from Iron Valiant. 96 available for the Altaria, 112 available for Parasol Lady. Market price for both of them right around $20, and both of them very similar as far as the quantity that I've sold over the past week. 23 for the Altaria, or 43 for the Altaria, 41 for the Parasol Lady. Both of them trending down, but with supply continuing to be there and demand not following suit. As you can see, with 43 and 41 sales over the past week, I would believe that these are going to continue to trend in the downward direction. The Gardevoir EX, this one also relatively flat over the past month. You might see it drop a couple more dollars because supply and demand do not seem to add up as well. 192 available listings, which is much higher than what we've seen from a lot of these other cards. Market price of $19.11. Wouldn't surprise me if you saw this hit $16, $17 over the next month or two. 71 that have sold over the past month. And the reason the market price is going to continue to get impacted as more and more become available is if demand does not follow suit with supply, then people are going to continue listing cards a penny cheaper, because it's a constant race to the bottom on TCG Player. So even though it's been relatively flat over the past month, you might see it lose another 10% over the next month. Then we've got the Garchomp EX, another special illustration rare. I think we've only got a couple more. The Garchomp EX, another special illustration rare from Paradox Rift. 107 available listings, so a little bit low as far as supply goes, but demand doesn't seem to be there. Much more in line with what we saw from the Altaria, with what we saw from the Parasol Lady. 53 available listings if we sold the same amount over the next 7 days. So 7 days, the amount sold was 54. That would bring the quantity down to 53 if it wasn't replenished, assuming it would continue to get replenished to some extent. This card is going to continue to trend in the downward direction as well. Same thing with Professor Seda. This one not doing too bad. This one relatively flat, but it has lost about 15% over the past month or so. 131 available listings. 86 have sold, so a little bit higher as far as the amount have sold over the past week. That would bring the supply down to 45 if that continued. So this one is definitely one to watch a little bit more closely, because it does seem like demand is there a little bit more than what we saw from the Garchomp. As you can see, only 54 over the past week for the Garchomp, where 86 have sold for the Professor Seda. So even though it's been trending downward a little bit, demand does look like it's there a little bit more. So we'll see how much this gets replenished over the next week. Then we've got the Chi-Yu right here from Paldea Evolve. These are the last two that we're going to look at. The Chi-Yu available listings, 133, currently selling at $15.42. This one trending in the upward direction, but demand does not seem to be there. So I do believe this card's going to come back down a little bit. You might see it hit that $13 mark again, lose about 20% over the next couple months. 95 would still be available, assuming that we continue to sell the same demand amount of 38 a week. I do think that will continue to get about 38 replenished, maybe a little bit more than that, which is going to continue, or which is going to bring this price downward a little bit. The Boss's orders is a very interesting one to look at because demand is, or supply is starting to dry up a little bit. Only 95 current available listings on TCG Player. So if you compare that to some of these other cards here, like the Altaria EX, for example, which is selling for $20.68, or the Chine Pao, which is selling for $20.71, with only 95 available, you might see this card hit $20 over the next month or two because demand does continue to show us that it is desired. 36 that have been sold, which is, again, is very, very similar to what we saw from that Altaria and from that Garchomp from Paradox Rift. However, Paldea Evolved, remember, Age of Set also playing a factor in this. So the fact that Paldea Evolved has been out for 9 months now, almost 10 months, is going to play a factor because less and less product is being opened, which means there's going to be less quantities replenished as more and more sell. So trending in the upward direction, I do expect Boss's orders to continue to trend in the upward direction. I feel like I just spoke for 25 minutes, just a ton of gibberish, and I hope some of it made sense, but I'm really looking for feedback on what you think of this data and what you think will happen as far as predictors go, because it's very interesting to look at the amount of quantities that are sold when you try and line up supply and demand, especially in the single market. With sealed, you know product is going to sell, and then once a sealed product gets cracked, it can never go back to a sealed product. It's going to take that out of the marketplace altogether, and that's why you continue to see sealed always trending in the upward direction. Scarlet and Violet base right now, from a sealed booster box standpoint, is dirt cheap, but as more and more product gets open and less product becomes available on the secondary market, that box is going to continue to trend in the upward direction because you can't replace, unless there's a reprint, you can't replace that sealed product. Whereas singles are every time you open up a box, it's going to add more singles to the market. So trying to understand where supply and demand meet when it comes to modern Pokemon cards. This is basically what I look at on a daily basis. This is data that is constantly swimming around in my head, so I know what to buy, what to sell, what to look for to replenish inventory on the website or to take to a competitive event. This is how the mind of Fanny works. And it could be, like I said, absolutely nothing. I've failed before. I've made mistakes before. I've done dumb things before. I've looked at data that is pointless before. So you can give me your input and your insight on things and see if you see anything in the numbers that maybe I'm missing. But I kind of wanted to throw it out there just to have a nice discussion. You can join us on Discord if you want to discuss it. The link for that is in the description down below. I hope you enjoy the data. If you do, please hit that subscribe button down below. Leave a like, leave a comment. It goes a really long way for the algorithm. But most importantly, thanks for listening to me ramble for far too long. I appreciate the heck out of you guys. Love you guys. We'll be back tomorrow with another video. Till next time, peace.